Hello, welcome back. I'm Darren, and today we're going to be talking about custom water cooling, specifically custom loop. So at the start of the video, I have shown my build, which is one that I still own at this moment in time. That consists of a RTX 3080 Ti. That was the Founders Edition card. 12700K. So a Z690 MSI Unify motherboard, I believe it is. I'm pretty sure it's got a 1000 watt Corsair PSU power supply in it. And a ton of EK water blocks, water cooling hardware. So it's in the Lian Li 011 Evo case. They have their specific distribution reservoir. I have their Founders Edition water block for the GPU and the Quantum Velocity 2, I think it is, CPU water block. And then two times 360mm radiators. Now the radiators are on the Fantex T30 fans because those are outright beasts at performance. And I think I've just got some Lian Li SL V2s, which are just basically case fans. So they're just adding a bit of fresh, cool air into the system. I could have put a third rad, but I decided that I would rather go with the aesthetics, and you're kind of torn in between. Would I rather have just the only air going into the system coming in through a radiator, which would mean warm air coming in and going out, or would I rather have some extra kind of coolish air coming into the system? That's the way that I went. But to get more on topic, do I think it's actually worth doing? And I'm going to talk about this as a consumer, which is all I am. I'm absolutely not an expert. I have water cooled quite a few builds, and I'm going to kind of quick run through what I think are the pros and cons. Now, probably the biggest con I'd say in 2024 is if you're looking at buying a 40 series NVIDIA card or an AMD, there are definitely cards that will have amazing air coolers on them. It's not like, say, going back to the GPU that's in that exact build. So that has a 3080 Ti on and that was a Founders Edition. And that thing probably pulled, I don't want to be wrong here, but I'm sure that's still a 400 watt GPU. And at the time, the Founders coolers weren't anywhere near as big as what they are now. They were kind of first generation of that type of cooler. They weren't quiet, that's for sure. They weren't bad on performance, but they're nowhere near as good as like the AIB coolers that you would have got at the time. So, for instance, a Strix card or a Supreme card or something along those lines. So it's that card, the 30 series Founders Editions card definitely benefited from having a water block. Now, I'm not going to say the benefit was huge in terms of noise, absolutely, because they weren't very quiet once they were under load, depending on obviously what type of airflow that you've got running through your case. They definitely weren't the quietest coolers on the GPU at the time. So that did benefit from water cooling. And Intel, we all know Intel, when it comes to power usage, they're not the efficiency king, let's put it that way. So, it's pretty common for an Intel CPU to be pulling 250 watts. Not so much in gaming, but they still run relatively well. So there are reasons to water cool, but as I say, in 2024, when it comes to certainly the two GPUs that I have in my possession, so one being a 4080 MSI Supreme and the other one being the Sapphire Nitro AMD 7900 XTX, those coolers are amazing. Now, obviously, if you're going down the tiers, so if you're using the same cooler on a 7900 XT, 7900 GRE, or further down the stack, less power, those coolers are going to handle those like with ease. They're going to run quiet. Your temps are probably going to be below 70, I'd imagine, as long as you've got adequate case cooling. So I think that has started to shift the balance of, is it worth it? Now, there seems to be kind of thoughts that you're going to gain a huge ton of performance by having a GPU that's going to run slightly cooler. I don't see it. I'm not saying you won't gain any performance, and the performance that you will gain is if you are interested in benchmarking, because you will bring your GPU down maybe a bin or two on the clocks, but you're not going to throw £1,000 water cooling system and find yourself taking your GPU up another tier. It's not happening. And that's probably the next place that it comes into, is money. Obviously, as I said at the start of this video, I do like using EK water block stuff because visually, for me, in my own taste, I think they make the nicest looking stuff, but it's expensive. Like really, really expensive. And you don't think about it at the time when you just click onto the website, click on you find a water block for your GPU, or you find the CPU block, but then you start to add in the reservoir, the pump, whether you buy one that comes with it, obviously, the radiators, and then the absolute killer is all the fittings that you need. At that point, you're probably, if you're doing a double radiator, GPU block, CPU block, all the fittings you need, the piping you need, you're probably not going to be far short of £1,000. That's £1,000 you're adding onto your system for probably the only benefit you're likely to see is going to be in benchmark scores. Don't expect that suddenly you're going to get an extra 20 FPS out of your GPU, because that ain't happening. Certainly not when you compare to how well a cooler works on some of the modern GPUs. Maybe years ago, if you're talking a GPU that was hitting nearly 100 degrees, that will be thermal throttling or close to throttling. It's definitely, obviously, it's going to be downclocking, because a GPU will probably start downclocking probably somewhere between 50 and 60. So you'll start to obviously see it drop down some bins. So yeah, cost, massive. If you're paying someone to actually water cool the system for you, that goes up even higher. So that's something that gets taken into account. Now, obviously, I've done my own, so that's not a major factor for me, but it's still a lot of money. And the next kind of place that gets you into is resale. So that system is now my old system. I have two newer systems that I use, and I did at one point try to sell that system. I was kind of undecided of thinking my son will need, and he was using it, a PC. And I was kind of thinking it's overkill for him. It's just stupid to pass that on to him. I'm not going to use it because I've now bought two kind of newer generations of PCs. So I'll sell it. And I pretty much factored in an entire loss on every penny I spent on the water cooling, and then knocked off a ton more for obviously being old generation parts, and I could not shift it. And the only interest I was getting was if you can put the air cooler back on and put it all on air, or add an AIO from people that just don't trust water cooling and don't want anything to do with water cooling. So resale, nightmare. And I never have problems. I'm confident in building certainly a Intel NVIDIA system where I live, that I will sell it very easily, normally the same day that I put it out for advertising, because I never ask stupid money in return. I just want to obviously get something back. And I generally, when I'm selling my old parts, what I'll generally do is find a new case, and either have some, if I've recently swapped some fans, so if I've still got some kind of old generation of like the Lian Li fans or something like that, I'll throw those in. So I'll build it into a new case. I'll normally put like a new drive in, and basically make kind of a new plus second-hand parts build, put it up for sale, and I'll generally get a good price for it, and I'll have no problem selling it. Now, this water-cooled build, no chance. I mean, I would have literally had to sell it for like probably 500 quid to get rid of it, because it was almost seen as a negative of it being water-cooled. So that's definitely something that needs to be taken into account. Obviously, I see a lot of people online giving the advice to... There's a lot of people online, obviously, with asking about problems with cooling CPUs. So Intel, we all know Intel are running hot. That's nothing new. They've been running like that for the past God knows how long. AMD this generation are running hot. They're designed to. Obviously, they've designed to use thermal headroom, so it will take the thermal headroom available to allow for maximum boost. But then that's still chucking a ton of hot air into your room. If you don't like that, then it becomes a bit awkward. So AIOs are pretty much commonplace now. I know some people are still against AIOs. That's fine. If you want to stay air-cooled, happy days. I think you're going to struggle, certainly if you're on Intel. But that's not my worry. So the last two builds that I've done, or pretty much every other build in this house at the moment, my daughter's, I did not long ago with some old parts from other builds, and then put in a new case and stuff for her. So the recent builds that I've done have all been using an AIO. And I see a lot of discussions online with people still struggling. I think it's probably down to either the tuning between the fans that they're using, the tuning of the pump on the AIO, or just really bad kind of air movement within their case, just doing something probably wrong, but they're still obviously struggling. And I know obviously there's been the problem with Intel limits on motherboards and stuff. So you see a lot of people still struggling with temperatures, even running AIOs. And a lot of people advise them that they need to go custom loop. I don't understand that advice. If you're running a 250 watt CPU and you've got it connected up to a 360 millimeter AIO, what difference is that going to make putting in a custom loop? Because generally, most custom loops, you're probably going to have maybe room for two 360 rads. But then you're throwing a GPU in that's also throwing in 300 to 400 watts of heat. It's a strange thing to say. Now, I'm not saying that on a custom loop, you are using higher quality parts. The CPU block will be higher quality. The pump in the reservoir will be higher quality. So I'm not saying you don't have the opportunity to maybe, get a couple of degrees better in temperature. But people are literally making out that if you're struggling with temperatures on a 360 AIO on your CPU, it's because you're using an AIO and you need to go custom loop. What, a CPU only custom loop with 4 360mm rads? I mean, I don't get that. That's my personal thoughts. Maybe I'm wrong. As I say, I'm definitely, everything that you watch on my channel is just how I think. It's my thoughts. Some of it's backed up by the small amount of experience that I have. I don't have a huge amount of experience. As I've stated before, with software, I'm pretty bad. With hardware, I'm pretty good. So, yeah, basically, that's kind of my thoughts on water cooling at the moment. If you're building a PC and you just want it to look kick-ass good, water cooling looks awesome. And I don't really, at the moment, at this stage, when you're buying, the newest generation GPUs, I don't see it being anything more than that. Now, I'm probably, the thing that I don't like about AIOs is I really don't like the soft tubing that tends to always get in the way. And I build PCs, I want them to look good. It sits on my desk. I enjoy building PCs just as much as I love using my PC. I enjoy building PCs. I spend a lot of time sat just looking at my PC and admiring my work. So AIO tubes really do bug me. I'm not going to lie. So I am someone that is pretty dumb, and I will spend the money to build a CPU only loop that will give me no extra or marginal extra performance over an AIO. It will cost probably £400 more to do it, just to get away from the soft tubes that are hanging in a direction that I don't want them to be in. So it's a bit of a strange. My advice to most people is, unless you're doing it for looks, don't bother. Whereas for me, I will do it because I just love doing it, and wasting money is something that I am really, really good at. And yeah, I'm going to probably call it there, really. So, like I said, my views on water cooling in 2024 are, if you're doing it for looks and you want to spend, you've got the money to spend and you want your PC to look good, go for it. Is it worth it? No, I don't think so. You will run into some problems trying to sell it. I mean, basically, if you want to spend your money wisely, buy good fans, because that's where your cooling, that's the most important part of your cooling, is the fans. But make sure, if you're using an AIO, if you need to buy an AIO and then buy an extra pack of fans that are better performance fans to go on your AIO rad, do that. It's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than doing a custom loop. So pay attention to fans. That's probably my biggest or the best advice I can give. And yeah, as I say, I've got nothing against water cooling. It's very likely that my Fractal North build that I showed recently, so my 4080 and 13700K build, it's very likely I will be water cooling that soon, which is really stupid. But I have an old reservoir that is sat in my loft at the moment, not doing anything, and it's a really nice looking reservoir, and I just want to put it into a system. So I can see myself doing that shortly, which is not advice that I'd give to anyone else, but I'll probably do it. This is a good place for me to end. So if my advice has been of any help to you, awesome. If you've made it this far, awesome. And I will catch you in the next one.